Port Story. Bison Re. It was a bright and sunny Monday morning with birds singing and people bustling as they made their daily commutes to work and school. Children were running circles around each other, playing tag to wake up their sleepy bones and make the trip more entertaining. The sun was high up in the sky, and there was a light breeze that whistled by a young cheerful girl as she jostled her way to school. Her stopping only to comfort a crying child after they had tripped over their own feet while horsing around. All it took was a word and a smile from the girl before the child was back on their feet and playing happily again. The girl seemed to be a personification of the day, and despite it being the dreaded beginning of the week, the people around could not help but stop and smile as the young girl skipped by with a large smile across her face and a tune reverberating from her throat. A pleasant hum snatching people's attention as she went by. The girl seemed to be shining like the sun with her medium-length brown hair, her rosy cheeks, and her clean and crisp uniform. She was as bright as her name. It's such a nice day. Uraraka hummed out with a sigh and a burst of energy as she made her way towards UA Academy. It was the most prestigious hero academy out there, and Uraraka was a freshman there. Honestly, it was like a dream to think that after all of her hard work, her wishing, and her praying, she was actually able to pass the entrance exam and manage to not get expelled or die after going through all of the trials and tribulations the past few months. If it was not for her friends and classmates, one in particular, she was sure that she would have given up her dream by now, but knowing there was someone else succeeding due to working just as hard or harder than she with way less experience, it gave her the confidence to keep going despite knowing there were many people with stronger quirks that had been turned away. And it's all because of a boy named Deku. How ironic, Uraraka thought with a giggle and an unknowingly peculiar smile before she opened the door to Class 1A. And then, unsurprisingly, as soon as she opened the door, she was met with a curse-infused rant from Bakugo and the sight of a hardened Kirishima as he snickered while avoiding a tiny explosion aimed half-heartedly his way. Hey, what's up GU? Eek. A squeak and a thud could be heard across the room as Kaminari barely missed an explosive punch to the throat. Hey, Bakugo, watch where you aim that assault weapon, man. You nearly took my head off. Shut the fuck up, light bulb. If you couldn't dodge that puny ass punch, then your ass shouldn't even fucking be here. Hey, even some pros would have a hard time dodging that nuclear hazard. Whatever, ass wipe. Just take your friend's shit stain over here and get the fuck out of my face. Fine. Whatever. Kaminari, due to his slight lingering fear of Bakugo, held his tongue as he gave in. No one could win an argument against Bakugo because of his loud foul mouth and his beyond destructive power, so all Kaminari could do at that point is pout and fold his arms dejectedly while Kirishima laughed at him in the background. Ignoring the insult thrown his way. Wait a minute. Why does he get to be shit-stained? Laughs dude, are you serious? Does it even matter? Promoted stories. You'll also like Return of Mokuden discontinued 3.5K45. This story is officially up for adoption. If anyone is interested, message me or comment on the story. Mirko X Shy Male Reader 175K 1.1 Key. Don't own MHA. I hope you enjoy the story I made. I am. Sequel of UR check mark 69.5K 1.8K. This book is the sequel of You Are So Better. Read that first before going here. Tears of joy, tears of joy. Thank you to that one reader that suggested this title. I can't see you sad face, but thank you. Free. Onishots 150K3K. This is a collections of free X readers. Requests on this are now closed. After all. Omfluke 11.4K 802. Will edit once I'm free. N. This is a work of fiction, and any similarity with other works is purely coincidental. Excuse grammatical errors and misspellings. Eng. Much needed love. Yandere succubus Momo x Izu. 52.2K 826 after Wattpad had decided to delete this story out of nowhere. I and many reader were distraught. So I'm making a remake of the story from the ground up to compensate. The hero who sings with a smile 39.8K 368 high. Guys, this is my first story I write on Wattpad. I hope you like it. Kirishima asked in between breaths, questioning the logic. Hell yeah, I'm not gonna be the freaking ass wipe cleaning up your shit. Well, when he put it like that, well, I'm not gonna be the ass wipe either. Ass wipe. What did you call me, ass wipe? Oh, nothing. Ass wipe. Will both of you just shut the fuck up? Uraraka spent a good minute or so at the doorway blinking confusedly at the interaction before she shook her head with a sigh. Typical. I should probably be used to this by now. Uraraka decided it was best to ignore the whole scene as she made her way to her desk to put her stuff down when she noticed that none of her classmates seemed too affected by the scene in the least bit as they mingled within their own groups. As usual, Class 1A was a bundle of activity even this early in the morning, but Uraraka was slightly surprised to see so many people there when there was still about 30 minutes before class would start. Shiro, Shoji, and Tokiyami sat in one group talking about some new manga that was apparently becoming popular amongst the boys while Koda, Sato, and Ojiro seemed to be discussing who would win in a fight between a half-serious All Might and a fully serious Aizawa-sensei. Their opinions were surprisingly divided. There were a few stragglers who were off by themselves, such as Todoroki, who seemed to daydreaming about something, and Aoyama, who was staring at himself in the mirror while he adjusted his hair. None of this was really out of the ordinary. However, for some reason, all the girls seemed to be huddled around Hagakuri's desk, and while Yaoyorozu seemed to be studying in the desk next to Hagakuri, Uraraka could tell that she also seemed quite interested in what was going on. The other girls seemed to notice too, since there was a conveniently placed opening right where Yaoyorozu could peek ever so slightly. Mina was leaning over the desk, which led to her skirt riding up slightly, and in that moment, Uraraka noticed a certain grape-headed boy crouching with a lecherous cackle as he tried to steal a peek. In annoyance and alarm, Uraraka was about to expose the culprit when she noticed a shadowed figure with a glint in his eyes and glasses approach the unsuspecting Mineta before dragging the boy away as he clawed persistently at the floor with sobs and agony. No, no, no. I was on my way to the promised land. The only thing that will land you is a beating and a sentence, my friend. Peeping is not an activity of the righteous. Uraraka giggled and gave a thumbs up with a twinkle in her eye that went unrecognized as Iida, the class president and one of her best friends, served up justice on the side of the classroom that was conveniently the most distance away from the girls. Even a pro peeper like Mineta could not clear that distance without going noticed. Despite being curious about what held all of the girls' interest so intently, Uraraka unconsciously gave the classroom another once-over in search of a pile of green curly hair and freckles. Not seeing what she was so intently looking for, Uraraka felt an oddly placed feeling of disappointment well up in her stomach. And, she could not for the life of her figure out why. I guess he's not here yet. I wonder what's keeping him. Not seeing Midoriya around and wanting to avoid the whole Mineta situation, Uraraka decided to check out what could possibly steal the attention of all the girls in Class 1A who had such varying degrees of interests. Interests. It's got to be pretty interesting if it even has Yaoyorozu's attention. She rarely participates in gossip. She approached them to see that they were all staring intently at Hagakuri's laptop before Mina jumped away with a slight noise of protest and blush across her cheek while Hagakuri giggled cutely. What in the world could make such an open girl like Mina blush? So uncool. Why did you pair me up with him? He should totally go with Juro. They're the ones always arguing like a married couple. Humph. No way in hell that would happen. I'm not raising kids who short circuit their brains every time they use their quirks. Ah, but you're always making fun of him. Doesn't that mean some part of you likes him? I mean, normally I wouldn't mind, but look at how lame our kid looks. I'm too awesome for that. Uraraka stood on her tiptoes to see that all the girls were staring at a screen that had a picture of Mina and Kaminari to either side with a picture of someone else who kind of resembled the two in the middle. The picture was of a young man with light purple skin and strawberry blonde hair who wore a smirk with a slightly flirtatious look in his eyes which were gold surrounded by a sea of onyx. His hair was wavy and shaped like Kaminari's, and he looked disturbingly like her two classmates. Wow. What's that? Uraraka uttered the word without thinking, and upon noticing her presence, Mina jumped to cover the screen with her hands. Eh, when did you get here, Uraraka? Look away. There's nothing to see here. Interesting. You were begging Hagakuri to do your simulation until you saw how lame it turned out. Suyu noted nonchalantly as Jiro started cracking up with laughter while Hagakuri giggled merrily, and all Mina could do was pout and fold her arms as she noticed that even Yaoyorozu was muffling her laugh behind her hand. Oh, be quiet, Sutsu. You're just saying that because you haven't done one yet. Either way, I feel bad for your future husband if you're that fickle. Besides, you're acting a lot like Kaminari does when things don't go his way. Another round of laughter, and Uraraka still felt lost. Whatever. How about we do yours next? Sure, I don't mind. It's just a simulation anyways. Mina opened her mouth to retort, but Uraraka spoke up before the argument could continue anyway further. Excuse me, can someone tell me what's going on? Uraraka managed to stall the conversation long enough to be noticed again. Sure, Urara-chan, come over here, and I'll explain it to you. She gave a nod of confirmation as she made her way to the side of Hagakuri's ever-floating uniform before leaning down slightly in order to prevent obstructing Yaoyorozu's view. Though, it did not do much good since the girl's sight was still blocked by her none too invisible back end despite the other girl straining her neck from her seat. There was a slight noise of protest heard in the background. Okay, so, you've heard of quirk-influenced marriages before, right, Urara-chan? Hagakuri asked sweetly, and Uraraka had a slight look of confusion on her face before she gave a slight affirmative bob of her head. Yeah, I think so. Isn't that when two people decide on whether to get married based on the compatibility of their quirks? MMMHMMM. Yep. They do it in the hopes that their combined genes will ultimately strengthen their future offspring. You know, survival of the fittest and all that jazz. Now that you mention it, I have been hearing a lot about that recently. Apparently, there are even matchmaking agencies and dating sites out there geared towards matching up couples with the highest quirk compatibility rates. I, honestly, think it's a little sad that people are doing things like that just to produce stronger offspring. It's almost like they are reverting back to hierarchically fueled arranged marriages. Everyone except Hagakure gave a slight pause at how eloquently Uraraka expressed herself, and Hagakure and Uraraka were so focused on their own conversation they did not hear the other girls mumbling amongst themselves. Wow, this got political all of a sudden. Is Uraraka actually smart, hierarchically? I didn't even know she knew a word with that many syllables. Well, I never really thought she was dumb. Just kind of ditzy. As blunt as ever Suyu. Hagakure did not miss a beat. I totally agree with you Urara-chan. I can't imagine marrying someone just because of their quirk. I mean, just because our quirks match up well does not mean that we do. That's what's so sad. By the way, what does that have to do with what you guys were looking at? Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, since quirk-influenced coupling has become so popular recently, a lot of people have been trying to find cheaper and more fun ways to test out their compatibility since not everyone can afford to go see a matchmaker or pay the subscription to be on a dating site. I guess that makes sense. I don't know many people who could afford to do that. I know I couldn't. I know, right? So instead, this guy created an app you can download that allows you to simulate your compatibility with anyone you want. Really? You can do that? Yeah, it's actually become so popular that someone from the support department actually digitally uploaded the information of all the UA Academy students into our own private server. So now, all you have to do is find your class and click on the two people you want to match up, and it shows your compatibility and a simulation of your future kid. Wow. It's really interesting. But kind of creepy at the same time. Yeah, I guess. Uraraka took a look back at the screen now that she actually knew what everything meant, and she found herself mystified at what she saw. It seemed as if everything finally hit her. So, you're telling me that this is a simulation of what Mina and Kaminari's son would look like? Well, it's supposed to be. Humph, that kid's no son of mine. Why Mina-chan? He seems fine to me, he's even kind of handsome. That's cause you haven't seen a simulation of his powers yet. Kid's a total noob. Jiro responded before Mina stuck her tongue out at her. Hey, I don't care if he is just my fake kid. Don't talk bad about him. Thought you didn't claim him. So, doesn't matter. Jiro and Mina held each other's gazes for a few seconds too long before they both broke their eye contact with a huff. So, are you saying you can actually simulate how his powers will work? Is that even possible? Yeah, I mean, it's just probability, but it simulates the functions and abilities of their future child by calculating all of the inputted information, including personality, weaknesses, strengths, and their quirks. All I have to do is press this button and Uraraka watched as the picture on the screen zoomed out to show a replicated figure that shot out some acidic liquid before discharging an electric shock which used the liquid as a conductive. However, since the figure was already covered in liquid, he promptly began to electrocute himself before passing out in a burnt crisp. A new round of laughter could be heard as Jiro held her side to keep her guffawing body stable while Suyu began hiccuping after failing to control her own irrepressible laughter. Hagakuri giggled sweetly, and Uraraka tried to hide her own grin behind her hand. Yaoyorozu, at this point, had completely given up hiding her interest as she snickered from behind Uraraka. All Mina could do was fume. It's not funny. You can't trust this stupid software anyways. There is no way someone could completely and accurately predict something like that. Jiro was the first one to compose herself and respond. God, it's even chuckles funnier. Haha, the second time around. Face it, Snickers. Your kid's a dweeb. Suyu was not too far behind despite the fact at some point she had progressed from hiccuping to actually ribbiting. I mean, what do you expect when your compatibility was only 27%? Of course, he's going to suck. Haha. Yeah, I have to agree. It's only, hee hee, natural. Despite her agreeing with Suyu's sentiment, Yaoyorozu's opinion sounded a bit more genuine. Oh, shut up, the lot of you. If it's so funny, let's see you guys try it out. Hagakuri's whole body seemed to hum in agreement as she bounced with excitement. Even though they could not see her, the others got an inkling of how she was feeling by the way her clothes bobbed up and down. Oh, I agree. I have already simulated myself with Kirishima-kun. We actually got a 76%, which is pretty good. Yeah, when you compare it to others. Quiet you. So now, who wants to give it a try? How about you, Yaomomo-chan? What if I simulated a match between you and Todoroki-kun? W what? WY. ID don't think that'd be a good idea. Yaoyorozu's whole face seemed to bloom in red as Mina smirked. Yeah, why not? A pairing between the two UA students of recommendation. Could be pretty radical. Or better yet, how about pairing up Jiro and Kutra? No, no, I've got it. Jiro and Mineta. Mina suggested a little too enthusiastically while Jiro's face grew a scowl by the minute. TCH, why don't you pair up with Mineta? Anything would be better than your pairing with Kaminari. Kaminari. Huh. Whatever. I bet my way baby could beat your grape baby any day. Well, too bad that's never going to happen. We'll see about that. Oh, all of those sound really interesting. Though, we probably won't have time to do all of them today since homeroom is going to start pretty soon. So, how about we try and think of one more really interesting one we could do before class starts? Great idea, Hagakuri-chan. Let's do that. Uraraka found herself agreeing just to end the tension between Mina and Jiro, and Yaoyorozu nodded in agreement just because she was happy the attention had been taken away from her. She did not think she could handle staring at her and Todoroki's possible future child. Okay then, think everyone. And, once you've thought of a really interesting one, we can input it in. Hagakuri, as always, was the most excitable one out of the group. But still, despite the fact that Mina and Jiro spent an extra couple seconds glaring at each other, Hagakuri's excitement at her own idea effectively distracted them long enough for them to think. All the girls spent a couple minutes contemplating who their last pairing should be since none of them really wanted to be chosen to be paired up. Hagakuri and Suyu seemed to be the only ones who did not really care. But, Hagakuri had already simulated her compatibility with Kirishima, and the fact that Suyu was so open-minded made pairing her up a little less interesting. It probably would not have been as bad if they were simply choosing random guys they did not know. However, since the guys in their class were the only guys that they were really familiar with, it made more sense to choose one of them despite the fact it made choosing extremely uncomfortable. Uraraka was sure that there were a few guys in the class the other girls would not mind being paired up with, but admitting that would be pretty much be admitting to some kind of attraction to or interest in some guy in their class. No one was going to do that. Uraraka briefly wondered who she would choose. The only complete and utter no's would have to be Mineta and Bakugo. She could even tolerate Aoyama a little bit better than those two. But, despite knowing who she would definitely not choose, she did not really think there was any guy in class who she would actually actively have an interest in pairing with. Maybe, probably, she unconsciously found her eyes wandering around the room again. Roaming, searching. I have a suggestion. Of course, it was Suyu who spoke up. She seemed to be the most impartial one out of the whole group, so whatever her suggestion was probably going to be the best bet out of the whole group. Yay, finally. What is it, Sutsu-chan? All of a sudden Suyu's eyes locked with hers, and for that split second before the other girl looked away, she felt herself become unbelievably nervous as a knot began to form in her throat. Oh no. How about we pair up? Please, don't. Uraraka and. Here it comes. Midoriya. Eek, eek. Uraraka felt the squeak come naturally from her throat, and she had actually caught the attention of some of the guys with her high-pitched squeal. Hey, what do you think they're talking about? They've been huddled up since they got here. They couldn't be talking about us, right? TCH, nah. Probably talking about ponies and some romantic drama or some shit. Yeah, you're probably right. By the way, I wonder what's taking Midoriya. Who knows? He probably overslept after spending the whole night researching some superhero otaku stuff. Haha. Yeah, probably. He's probably alright. Yeah, probably. There was a slight moment of silence where all the other girls seemed to think about the possibility before one by one a smile began to etch its way across their faces. Their eyes moving to stare at Uraraka. Perfect. Absolutely brilliant. Of course. Why didn't I think of that? That would make the most sense. I mean, it is the pairing that has the most probability of actually happening. What are you guys talking about? Why do you think that? Me and Dee-da-da. Dee-da-da. That'll never happen. All the girls shared a knowing look as Uraraka felt her whole body erupt in a blush, and she could not keep her body from shaking. Her and Deku. Why would anyone think that they would? That they could. It was madness. Complete madness. Maybe. Possibly. Right. Sure. She had admired him since he saved her during the entrance exam, but that's just because he was a good guy. A true hero. Who didn't admire him for that? And sure, she found herself thinking about him often without even realizing it, or searching for him whenever he wasn't around. That's just because he was one of her best friends. Iida probably did stuff like that too. I mean, it's not like she stared at him when he was not looking, or counted the number of freckles across his cheeks so she could memorize them and have an accurate count for her dreams and fantasies. Haha. No, no, she'd never do that. And, even if she did, that didn't necessarily have to mean she liked him, right? Right. Everyone was just being crazy. Completely mad. She knew that. She definitely knew that. So, since she knew all that and she felt that way, she still could not explain why her nerves were standing on end, why her stomach felt heavy, and yet her body felt as light as if she had used her own quirk on herself. Herself. Come on, Urara. Don't act as if you're not curious. Mina said slyly as she slinked across the room before throwing her arm around Uraraka's shoulders. I mean, come on. Just think about it. You don't have to talk about any feelings you do or don't have. Just admit you're curious, and try out the simulation. But, I'm not C. Curio. It's not like just trying it out is saying that you like him. I mean, I did the simulation with Kaminari, and I don't like him. And, it's not like Hagakuri is exactly fawning over Kirishima. We just did it for fun as all. Well, you and Kaminari might not be the best exam. Anyways, if you can say with absolute 100% honesty that you are not in the least bit interested in trying it out, we'll move on. If not, then the floor is yours. Uraraka thought about it, and despite her reservations, she knew she wanted to know. She wanted to see. It wasn't because she liked him or anything. It was just because it was all in the name of fun. Who wouldn't be at least a bit interested with such a tool at their disposal? Besides, her and Midoriya got along fairly well in real life, so she could not help but wonder how well their physical components, their bodies, matched up. I guess I see could give it a try, squee yay. Hee hee. This should be interesting. Yeah, don't worry. Just like Acid Breath said. Just because you do the test doesn't automatically mean you're hot for Midoriya. Hey, I don't spit acid. But can you though? That's beside the point. Come over here, Urara-chan. You can have my seat. Oh, okay. Uraraka sat down in the newly empty seat to come face to face with a screen that had a list of the students of Class 1A, and as soon as her eyes met the screen, she found a pile of green hair and freckles as always. It was instant. Just relax, Uraraka. It won't be that bad. Yaoyorozu spoke comfortingly, partly out of friendliness and genuine concern and partly out of relief and gratitude. She would not want to be in her place. Okay. So it's pretty simple. Since all of our information has pretty much already been entered in the database. As no one else freaked out that someone managed to gather so much information about us. I've just been trying not to think about it. All you have to do is click on your name. Uraraka's picture instantly appeared on the screen to the right. And Midoriya's name. Uraraka felt herself instantaneously try to gulp down the building lump in her throat as Midoriya's name appeared to the left. Before clicking on the sync button. Wait. All of the girl's eyes looked at her expectantly as she brought her hands up to cover her face. I can't look. You guys do it. Are you sure, Uraraka? Yeah. We don't have to do this if you really don't want to. And no, it's fine. I want you guys to do it. I'm just too nervous. I can't. Well, okay, if you're sure. Go ahead, Hagakuri. MMMHMMM. Okay. Here we go. Uraraka heard the click of the mouse from behind her hands, and she felt the sweat build up on her forehead in anticipation. A few seconds of silence passed, and she guessed that all of the information was probably just loading when she heard a few sharp gasps and intakes of breaths. Huh, are you for real? No way. What? After hearing the gasps and the sounds of shock around her, Uraraka instinctively removed her hands to see what had everyone so surprised, and upon seeing the number of compatibility, she felt her own body gasp in wonder. Wonder. 95%. What? That's unheard of. Yeah, the most I have seen has been 84%, and that was only once. Other than that one time, I have never seen anything ranging beyond the 70s. This cannot be right. There is no possible way that any two people could be this compatible with each other. It's physically and scientifically impossible. There must be something wrong with the system. Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, we still do not really know what Midoriya's quirk truly is. I mean, yeah, it is pretty similar to All Might's quirk, but it is not nearly as strong. Plus, he is pretty inconsistent, and he rarely really uses it that often. So, if we don't even really know what he can do, I doubt whoever inputted the data would know all that much either. It's probably pretty skewed. However, despite what everyone was saying around her, Uraraka could not help but stare at the screen in wonder. A faint blush lining her already rosy cheeks as she stared at the picture in the mirror. It was picture of a young man with curly dark hair with green tips that while slightly shorter in the back seemed to defy gravity as it stuck out in all angles at the front. He had soft kind brown eyes that went really with his dark hair, and freckles that spattered slightly across his cute pert nose. He had a smile as wide as Midoriya's but as cheerful as and sweet as her own. His face was boyish much like Midoriya's, but there was a glint in his eyes that showed more confidence than either of them had. To put it simply, he was beautiful, and Uraraka felt as if she might be in love. As crazy and illogical as it was, she felt an emotional connection welling up inside of her the longer she stared at the picture. It almost truly felt as if she was staring at the future. She wanted to see more. She wanted to know more about this person who, while seeming to possess the best of either her and Midoriya, he still seemed to be something totally different. Something completely his own. Her hand twitched to start the simulation that would show a glimpse of the power her future child might have. Her eyes shimmering with unforeseen pride. Hey, who's that? Is that a new student? Wow, he looks really cool. Is he a pro or something? At the sound of Midoriya's unexpected voice, all of the girls seemed to jump back with a sound of surprise, but none as bad Uraraka, who turned as white as a sheet. Almost as if her soul had left her body. Midoriya began to panic. Is everything okay? What's wrong? Why are you guys acting so weird? What are you looking? Before he could take another look, all of the girls reacted in place of the still motionless Uraraka as they all jumped in front of the screen to block his view. What the hell, Midoriya? How are you going to just violate a girl's privacy like that? You pervert. W what? Move along. Nothing to see here. Yeah, it's none of your business. So scram shrimp. Huh. Well, okay, fine. I'm sorry for looking without asking. When I came in, I just noticed you were looking so intently at the screen that I wondered what had you guys so interested. You don't have to tell me what you were looking at if you don't want. But, can you at least tell me if Uraraka is going to be okay? She looks kind of pal. She's fine. They all answered in unison. Now, why don't you run along to your seat already? Class is going to start soon. You were already close to being tardy. You should have little bit more decency. Um, oh okay. Sorry, I guess. Midoriya slowly began to walk away from the group of girls in confusion, but whenever he tried to maneuver to get a better look at Uraraka, one of the other girls would move to obstruct his view. He did not know what in the hell was going on, but as long as they said Uraraka was okay, he guessed he could leave it be. He decided to just talk to Iida, who seemed to be studying rather coolly while sitting on a struggling Mineta for whatever reason. Yeah, okay, today was going to be weird. When she was sure his presence was gone, Uraraka felt herself let out a shaky sigh. Her body still trembling from shock and fright. Gee thanks guys. Anytime Urara-chan. Anytime. You going to be okay for the rest of the period at least. Why yeah. I think I can manage. Then, just as Uraraka stood on shaky legs to make her way to her seat, Aizawa-sensei walked through the door. Iida stood up instinctively to lead the salute, and Mineta shot across the room and into the wall due to the sheer force of his struggling. The class erupted into a round of laughter that served as a distraction while Aizawa-sensei tried to calm everyone down to begin homeroom. Uraraka made it back to her seat, and once she sat down, she felt as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She breathed another sigh of relief. She had dodged a bullet there. She felt a pair of eyes on her, and she looked up to meet the viridian irises of one Midoriya Izuku. He stared at her intently, and a blush lightly touched her cheeks. She felt like looking away out of embarrassment, but she found that she couldn't. Instead, she watched as a similar shade of pink played out on Midoriya's own cheeks before he shyly waved at her with a sweet smile. The sweetest smile she had never seen before. Eventually, they both looked away, and she spent the rest of the day struggling not to avoid eye contact with Midoriya. Class was not so bad, but she felt as if she nearly died by the end of lunchtime. Hero training kept her somewhat distracted. However, by the end of the day, she felt herself rushing through goodbyes as she hurried out of the classroom on her way home. Midoriya looked as if he wanted to say something, but he was not quick enough. Nevertheless, that's okay. She'd let him tomorrow. But today, she needed to get home. Because the whole day, she only saw one thing. Short dark green curly hair, soft brown eyes, and a kind smile. It was etched into her memory, so there was only one thing she could do. As soon as she got home, she downloaded the app, so she could finally continue their story. Where stories live. Discover now.